Hi, everybody. This is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, where we are freeing America one enslaved mind at a time, and we're the show that endeavors to do that. And along those lines, we have Charles Thorngren on with us. He is from Noble Gold, and we're going to talk a little bit about the volatility of the economy and why precious metals is a good outlet for people who are concerned about inflation, economic collapse, all the things that we talk about. Charles, welcome to the show. We're glad you could be with us. And boy, retail's really taken a bath, isn't it?
It is, and it's an indicator that is a lot more telling than most people realize. But it's a pretty important factor. If you and I aren't out there buying, things are not going well.
It really isn't, and we're seeing really record numbers of closures. Now, this is what I get when I hear the retail volatility. Well, Dave, it's nothing really to worry about. People are just transferring where they're buying from. They're going from retail outlet to online, so not to worry. Do you think that is a valid observation about what's happening in the retail industry?
In a very simple outlook, yes. If economy wasn't the thing that it is, and people need to realize that your online purchases don't employ as many people as your retail purchases. So it's a symptom and it's a warning sign for what's to come. Um, if you and I are not going to those retail stores, there's a lot of business that is not happening that goes around those retail stores. And yes, you save a little bit of money, but it also puts your fellow man out of work. And that's money that does not get put back into the system. And this is where you'll see that GDP number starts to slip, and that creates new problems. So when you're looking at these numbers, and if you look at the recent sales numbers earlier this month, um, the sales only rose by 0.4%, and economists were looking for 0.6%, which is a dismal number, zero point 0.6. We couldn't even meet that number, and that's a scary thing, because you have a stock market that counts on that number. For a company to be in business, it has to do business. For us to buy into it, and the valuation that it gets is based on its sales. It's a little bit simplified there, but that is the gist of it, and that is 90% of how you get valuation to a company.
Yeah, this is, and I hear what you're saying because, and also too, what people don't realize is you're going to pay somebody at some point in this process. So if someone's practices are to totally go online and it's done in mass, and we're forcing a lot of people into unemployment, that results in higher taxes to support, welfare and all that other stuff. So we're going to pay for it somewhere down the line. And so do you think
Yes.
people should be making a conscious effort to shop actively in their retail outlets?
They should. They should. Now, and I understand some things are a lot more convenient online. I get that. But this reminds me a lot of the late '70s, the early '80s, where we had the whole "Buy America" campaign for cars, because the car industry was so destroyed by overseas competition. And it's again, buying American means shopping at your local store. You got to buy some retail if we want to keep everyone actively employed.
I agree, but human nature. Amazon makes it too darn easy to order. In fact, I had trouble with a store recently, a retail outlet, had horrible customer service, and they really were unethical. And I shared the story with some people, and they said, I only use that particular outlet so I can see what's out there, and then I go to Amazon and buy it. And
Yeah, that's the big thing.
yeah, I'm hearing that a lot. And this is almost like the metaphorical equivalent of automation, isn't it? Automation putting people out of work. Online is putting retail workers out of work.
Absolutely, and it's exactly what it is. So, and until we find a way to fix that, we need to be a little bit more mindful, or just know what's coming. You know,
Yeah, there you go. And see, that's what I think we really need to adjust to. Because even if everybody heeded your words and they said, I'm going to really cut back on my online ordering just when it's absolutely necessary, and I'm going to go consciously to J.C. Penney's and Best Buy and all these other places, even that might not stem the tide of what's coming. Because I wrote an article recently where I detailed some quoted facts from the business sector that said over half the retail jobs right now are facing extinction because of automation.
true.
So at the end
It's
of the
true.
day, we may not have any control over this at all. So you're talking about looking ahead and saying, hey, look, if the retail sector begins to collapse, how will that cascade through the economy? Tell people what that'll look like and what it'll mean for them individually with their finances.
And the way it cascades is in a couple ways, just outside of the finances, but just in your environment. The less stores that are in business, the less people that are employed. We understand that that's a problem. They're going to need help, and it's going to raise our taxes. But it's also going to hurt the real estate market as well. And most people, one of the biggest investments they have is their home, and they're going to lose value there because as people lose jobs, they don't get to keep their houses. Houses get foreclosed on, and we did this. We understand that. We remember this from 2006 when it happened there and led to a greater bubble being burst. But that also leads into the next area. It's your finances. If what most people are invested in and most people save in is in the stock market, whether it's in a mutual fund or even an insurance annuity, an insurance company doesn't invest in something different. They're investing in the stock market just like everybody else. So you're going to see that valuation have to change. You're going to see a correction, and it's going to be very similar to what we've seen in the past. So your finances are going to get hit in that aspect. So your retirement accounts, the thing that you need, it's going to take a hit. And unfortunately, like with retirement accounts, one of the most important things is time for it to grow, time for it to compound. And you're going to miss out on that by having a heavy correction again. And this is why we look towards precious metals. It is the hedge. It is the counterbalance to an overinflated stock market. And that's where you'll find your protection. It's been considered a safe haven for 5,000 years, and it's not by accident that it's there. It's time to look back and say, this is where we need to be again.
Is it true? And this is why I have you on, because you can maybe correct my faulty belief system here. But I was told a long time ago the same amount of gold would buy a man's suit 100 years ago as it does today, and the same can be said for a house of equivalent value. Is that true?
That is so true. If you look, and a man's suit used to be purchased with a $20 gold coin. That same $20 gold coin right now is worth $1,300. You can get a mighty fine suit with that.
Interesting how that
You
becomes
know,
the barometer. Yeah, help me understand something else too, and this is a question I get a lot, and I tell my listeners, look, I've got to bring the experts on to answer questions like this. And the real good question that I get asked is, why does gold and to some degree silver hold their value over time, and nothing else seems to?
here's the most important thing and why that happens. It's not a fiat instrument. It's a tangible instrument.
Mm-hmm.
It's an ounce of the precious metals. There's no CEO. You don't have a scenario where you can get in there and inflate it unnecessarily. It moves as it's meant to move.
Right.
And it's always been a counterbalance to currency. So as we've created this dollar that now, it's 97% of what it was, not even just 100 years ago, you have that increase in metals. So it's always offsetting that loss over time. And that's the important thing. That's what makes it, and that's why people say it's a hedge against inflation. Everyone hears it so much, but they don't really understand what that means. That means as your currency becomes more and more manipulated, your metals go up more in value because it takes more of those worthless dollars to buy that ounce of gold. And that's why it's the hedge. People need to realize that the government says 3% inflation is good. So that means in the best of times, by the time you retire, you get to be 60 years old and you're ready to say, I'm done with all this. Your money has lost a significant amount of purchasing power. You're looking at almost 90% of its purchasing power is gone. That's why you have to earn a return to be able to retire off your money. And it's so hard to do, but that's why metals are there. They stand in that place.
Yeah, and to me, that makes a great deal of sense. And I'll tell you what doesn't make sense. I did some investigative articles 2 years ago, maybe a little over 2 years ago, in which the banks, and it was mostly, I believe, the G20 nations, changed their order of payout for their central banks in case of a default. And I found out two things in
Absolutely.
my investigation. They said, number one, in the United States, they only have 1.2% of the assets on hand with the FDIC to cover losses. So that means they have $1 for every $100, and that's not going to work. And the second thing I found out was that they put the credit swap derivatives people in the banks ahead of the commoners. So people like you
Yes.
and I would be last in line, meaning if there was an economic collapse in this country and the banks were affected like 1929, we'd never get a dime out, would we?
We would not.
And so
We
this
would
is,
not.
you
And
know,
they've hidden that behind that miracle is the FDIC insurance. It's going to be useless, folks.
yeah, it's the insurance that really isn't insurance at all. It's insurance in name only. I mean, if you got $100,000 in the bank, and even if you could circumvent the line and go to the front of the line, you'd be lucky if you get $1,000 back. I mean, that's how I look at this. And
And
so,
that's the truth of the matter.
and so, to me, precious metals is the way to go. And this is what I tell people: convert your soon-to-be worthless cash into precious metals every opportunity you can. So, talk to me a little bit about your company and what you offer.
We have the full spectrum of precious metals in gold and silver. The majority of our business is in your bulk metals, your bullion, your bars, your bullion coins, because that's where most people need to be. We have access to everything, but really this is about protection. So it's not about the shiniest coin that you can find. It's about finding the best value. And we help people do that, whether it's for delivery to them, whether they need a place to store it, or whether it's in their IRA. We can help in all those facilities. And we're the only precious metals company that has able to store your IRA precious metals in the state of Texas. We're the first and only company.
What's the advantage to doing that, Charles?
You know, there's a couple advantages. It's not the only facility we have. We have one in Delaware and one in Canada as well. But when you're looking at security and you're looking at a state that would stand up in case the federal government decided to pull some shenanigans, it's Texas. It's always been Texas.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. I'm good friends with Gary Haven, the movie producer of
Mm,
Amerigeddon, and he's really good friends with Governor Abbott. And
right.
so I hear some of these things on the backside, and what you're saying is 100% accurate. It always has been and always will be Texas, and I totally agree. But for people who aren't in Texas, they can still take advantage of this shift in strategy to basically make their money worth something by going to precious metals. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're not going to lock anyone out because of location. We have customers across the United States, some in Canada as well.
Well, let me give out your contact information. And for everybody else, you really need to think about doing this because you've seen the pictures from the Depression where people were lined up around the block and for blocks on end trying to get their money, and that never happened. And this happened in my own family. You know, my mom's family, that side of the family, had some money. I mean, they were people of some wealth, and they lost everything because they were tied into real estate, hotels, and when the banks went down, they went down. And I mean, we're talking people that went from wealthy to dirt poor. So if you don't think it can happen to you, you're talking to someone that I grew up with this family heritage from my mom. And my dad, when he was a young child, escaped what was soon to be Nazi Germany with his parents because they were being persecuted for what they were. They thought they were Jewish. They weren't because the Nazis didn't know how to spell, and it was it was kind of a funny story. But they ended up coming to America, and they had nothing. They had nothing, and so I grew up with this pounded into my head. This is why I understand what you're talking about. Let me give out some contact information for your company. It's noblegoldinvestments.com. But really, what you want to do is I think you want to get an expert on the phone who will talk to you about your financial situation. They'll advise you. It's none of this order, over the internet, and you don't get to talk to anybody, and it's take your chance. But you actually have a team of people that will talk to people and help them assess their situation. And let me give that number out. It's 888 596 7916. Again, that's 888 596 7916. And Charles, when they call, what will happen?
When they call, they're going to get a hold of one of my team members. They're going to get the information they need to make a decision. We're going to show you what options you have, because it's not a one size fits all.
Right.
We're gonna spend the time with you and say, okay, what questions do you have? And we're going to get those answered. We're going to show you what options you have, and we're going to work on the best scenario for you, because everyone has a different need, and that's what we do, and that's what experience does. When you have a team that knows what they're doing, they can make it work for you.
Absolutely. And see, to me, this is what I like about the personal touch that you have, because all too many times I see these investment firms, for gold and silver, other precious metals, and you're just supposed to order online without respect to your situation, and there's no one to talk to. And that scares me off.
Never the way to do it.
Yeah, I totally
Never the way
agree.
to do it.
Well, again, the website for Noble Gold is noblegoldinvestments.com. But really, what you want to do is we want you to call and talk to an investor. And it's not for everybody. And I know anyone who's reputable sells gold, they're going to say the same thing. This isn't for everyone's situation, but it is for people who have some money in the bank who stand to lose a lot, or in the market if they stand to lose a lot, or in IRAs if they stand to lose a lot. And that number again is 888 596 7916. And tell them Dave Hodges from the Common Sense Show sent you. Charles, this is a good service you're providing for people, and I'm really thankful that we're able to have people like you on who are offering services to people that are really making a difference in people's futures.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And I thank people like you who get the word out there, because I think it's very important in these times.
Well, unfortunately, Charles, I'm guess I'm one of those fear mongers they talk about in the Washington Post. But you know what? When we got a 1.5 quadrillion derivatives debt. We got a $20 trillion national deficit. Our unfunded mandated liabilities of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth are over $200 trillion. We only take in $2 trillion a year as a government. We have no way to pay this off. The crash is coming at some point, and the smart investor will take advantage of this. And again, that number is 888 596 7916. Charles, I want to thank you for coming on, and thank you again for the service you're offering for people, because I know you're going to help a lot of people save their water when that bad day comes.
That is so true, and it's my pleasure again. Thank you.
Okay, Charles Thorngren, ladies and gentlemen, noblegoldinvestments.com, 888 596 7916.